what being a floater friend is. You're that person in the friend group who isn't invited to every single hangout. Like, you're just kind of invited to the big things. It just kind of sucked to be like, oh, I feel like I kind of have friends, but I don't like really have like my person. Not the form of my person in a romantic sense, but more so like my person in a platonic sense. Alrighty, Kogies, we are back for another episode, and I finally changed outfits. We are hot girl toes outing summer in the club. Actually, no, not at the club. I've been doing just a wholesome activities. Guys, we are checking things off the summer wish list. Going to a bonfire tonight. Shout out Diane and Jeremy. Went on a little summer picnic. I went to Catalina Island. And honestly, very cute, very quaint. Don't know if you need to spend more than like 2 nights there. Like, I think 1 night is good. You could do a day trip. I'm just like, sometimes I don't want to do a day trip. Sometimes it's too much effort. Ate so many ginger chews to try to not get seasick. Didn't get seasick. I don't think I'm someone who gets that seasick, actually. I feel like maybe I like talked myself into that, but I'm okay. Went home and celebrated my dad's birthday. He is 58 years old, and he went, oh yeah, I'm 58 this year, and I went, 58? I think it was a little bit too shocked. I think I should have toned it down a little bit. But you know what my mom and my sister did really well with? The gift this year. My dad like hates having things in his ears, but he loves like listening to things like podcasts, music, whatever. And so we got him the Shocks like headphones, the one that goes through your like orbital bone or whatever. Beautiful work. So if you guys have a dad who like loves technology stuff, get that for him. Make sure you set it up, because sometimes when I don't set things up for my parents, they don't use it. What else did I do? There was a huge spider, built an entire web in the back seat. Discovered that yesterday, got rid of it, and it was a little scary. Literally built the entire web. Charlotte, where are you? And yeah, other than that, summer has been summering. We're just having a great time out here. And today, I want to talk about being the floater friend, because back in the day, your girl used to float quite a lot. And essentially what being a floater friend is you're that person in the friend group who isn't invited to every single hangout. Like, you're just kind of invited to the big things. And this is not just exclusive to one friend group, because usually floater friends are a part of multiple different friend groups, but the same thing happens where you're not a part of that core, right? We all know that core where it gets a little cliquey. They have hangouts on their own, and they're just things that you're not included in, and like and maybe there are other people who are also not included, but you're not really included to the point where you're getting FOMO because you're not being invited to certain things, or you feel like you don't have your go-to person, right? Because even within a friend group, like big friend groups, whatever, I feel like it's very like easy and natural to form smaller groups, right? And so oftentimes like that'll come in pairs or trios. And so if you're in a group of 4, that could totally happen if, like, I don't know, they form a trio, or there's a little pair and you're not in that pair, but then the other person in the group also isn't in that pair, you know? And a part of being the floater friend, I think, was back in the day, I would just always feel really left out. Like, it just kind of sucked to be like, oh, I feel like I kind of have friends, but I don't like really have like my person, right? Not the form of my person in a romantic sense, but more so like my person in a platonic sense, right? Because like I said, in friend groups, it's very natural and easy for smaller cliques to form. And so if you don't form those like very early on or whatever it is, then I feel like you just kind of go about being dissatisfied with your situation, but then you don't really know what else to do. And it just kind of sucks, right? Like, I have distinct memories of even up to college. In college, I remember I was just like, oh, I'm kind of a part of this friend group, but I'm like actually really not. Like, I feel like when I'm there, like, it's fine and it's fun, but, like, oh, that person doesn't really contribute. You know what I mean? And, like, right, we know those people who don't really contribute to the vibe. And I'm not saying that you have to always contribute to the vibe in order to be a part of a friend group, but I feel like oftentimes, like, right, why do people want to hang out with you? It's because of the energy that you bring. And so, because I knew my place in that friend group and it wasn't really actually in it, I feel like it made me more shy, more introverted, and like more self-critical, right? I think a lot of this has to do with not loving yourself and being hyper fixated on, oh, what am I doing wrong that I'm not being included in this? But I think the takeaway message here, honestly, is that it's not you, it's them, right? If there are people out here not valuing you for you, then is it really worth it? Because, right, I want to be surrounded by people who love me. I want to surround myself with people who I love. And so it only makes sense to value those friendships that value you back, right? And it's not in a very like transactional way. That's not what I'm saying, but it is more so you want to feel welcomed and loved, right? Like at the end of the day, I think human beings, we're all looking for the sense of community and belonging. And right, like we can find that within different groups like sports activities, run clubs, volleyball clubs, even golfing friends, church, etc. But right, when it comes to the friend group, oftentimes, I mean, at least speaking from my experience, like my friend groups aren't really centered around like activities. Like, yeah, sure, I make friends at these different activity things, but like my core friend group, it's just been like people I've met along the way and like have wanted to form really long-term friendships. And so it makes it so that we connect on like a different level, right? It's not so much, oh, we connect on this like activity that we both do and it's only because of frequency that we have such a good relationship. It's more so like this person has values that align with my values, or I feel like I can learn from this person, whatever it may be. And so it makes it so that you want to invest, right? And I'm a firm believer in investing in people that you like, right? I think this is a part of the transition that I'm going through right now, actually. Like, you guys know me. I love being extroverted and meeting a ton of people. And whenever I go out, talk to girls in the girls' bathroom, like, right, I do the whole ordeal. But recently, I think because I simply like don't have enough energy. I don't even know if it's the time anymore. I think it's the energy because I don't have the enough energy to keep up with everyone. I've noticed that like I've started to kind of cut down and cut back. And right, like I've gotten feedback from people saying that like, oh, you know, I think like it would be good for you to like just give yourself more like you time, right? Like alone time, whatever it may be, so that I can recharge. And so ever since like hearing that feedback, I've been a little bit more conscious of who I'm expending energy on. And I'm realizing that it's just like not really my responsibility to always be the one to reach out, right? And I don't want to be like pessimistic in that way because I'm not really the type of person to be like, oh, if so and so doesn't reach out to me, then I'm not going to reach out to them. Like, I try to be very proactive, and I actually think that that proactivity comes from being a floater friend, right? When you're the floater friend, you're kind of forced to make the plans because you know that you aren't always going to be invited to the function. And so it's forced me to become just more action oriented because I'm like, oh, if I don't want to feel left out, then I'll just plan it and I could leave other people out. That's a little spiteful of me, and I'm partially kidding. I'm mostly kidding. I'm like 95% kidding. But then there's that 5% where I'm like, oh, okay, you don't want to invite me? I guess we don't have any obligation to each other. No, but actually, I just became more proactive because I realized that, like, I just have to accept my place as the floater friend, right? I think I did so many years of fighting it, right? Where I would just, like, sit at home on a Friday night or, like, watch people post on, this is, like, right Snapchat days. I would watch people post on Snapchat and then, oh my God, guys, this is so embarrassing. I remember, so there was this girl, let's call her Lindsay. This girl named Lindsay, like, she was like a part of the big friend group, but I wasn't very close to her ever. And I remember she had a birthday party and she didn't invite me, right? Like, she invited I think she probably invited like 10 out of 11 people in the friend group, and then I was not included. And oh my god, I'm laughing. Do you guys remember Ask FM? It wasn't called that though. Hold on, let me look up what it was called. It's called Formspring. Oh my gosh, do you guys remember Formspring? Oh my gosh. So, okay, right, going back to the story, I wasn't invited to this birthday party, and I was like, why, Lindsay, why? And so on her Formspring, like, there's options to ask anonymously versus like I could just ask like from my profile, right? And I asked her, I was like, why didn't you invite Hannah to your birthday party? And I forgot to click ask anonymously, and so it asked for my profile, and I remember being so embarrassed because I was like, oh my god, like, it's so lame that she knows that I like was wondering, right? Like, who else was wondering except for me, right? Like, okay, my best friend was like also like, she was like, why didn't you get invited, like, why didn't she invite you? And so I feel like maybe in Lindsay's mind, she could have thought that like the other girl that my bestie asked, but like, you know what, I just like stood my ground and I was like, why didn't you invite me, right? Don't remember if she ever answered, but I do remember being extremely embarrassed that like I forgot to check ask anonymously. And so I think like that was probably one of the major experiences that made me be like, yo, I gotta be the one to make the plans. Maybe that's where like the planner in me has developed, because I was like, dude, I guess I'm not gonna be invited to everything, but like if I host everything, then like I get to choose who's gonna be invited or not, right? Like, it kind of like shifts the power dynamic a little bit. And so yeah, I like started making all these plans. Like, I would be kind of the one to like initiate a beach day, or going to the park, or going to the mall, or whatever it might be. And so, right from a very early age, I just like, yeah, I accepted my role as the floater friend. And I think, right, like, accepting your role as the floater friend is a huge step, because otherwise you're just sitting at home like me, not being invited to the birthday party, just wondering why you weren't being invited to the birthday party, and then going on Formspring and doing the whole thing. And so I think the sooner that you accept that you are the floater friend, the sooner you are to finding people who value you enough to like want to invest time in you, right? Like I mentioned, in college, like, right, I was a little bit floaty in this one group, and I realized afterwards that like, oh, these people like literally could not care less about me. Like, could not care less about me. And it wasn't until after college that I realized that I'm like kind of cool sometimes. I'm a cool human being, okay? I firmly believe that I am a cool human being. Otherwise, like, why would I want to hang out with myself? Like, I want to hang out with someone I want to hang out with, including myself. And so I found people that like finally like kind of, I felt seen, right? To be seen is to be loved, right? And so I felt seen for the first time. Like, oh, this person's actually going to check in on me and be like, oh, how did this thing go? How did this conversation go? How's it going with this? Like, I loved when people would like remember things about me, because also, you guys know, like, kind of have a goldfish brain. Like, I don't really necessarily remember things about other people, and so I'm trying to work on that. I honestly will take notes at a meeting, right? Take notes at just literally a casual friendship dinner, because I want to be better about it. It's just my brain isn't really oriented that way. And so yeah, you have to learn to like value yourself. Like, why do I think I'm such a cool person? I literally think I'm cool because like I know I have taste. That took years to develop, right? I will say back in the day, it was a lot of like, oh, like, this artist is cool. Like, oh, Kendrick Lamar is cool. Like, oh, camp vlog, no, I think is cool. Like, I love hip hop. I love A$AP Rocky, right? And I think looking back, it was a lot of like showiness, like, oh, this person's cool. But now that we're like, what, years, a decade? I'm like a decade out from, I'm not going to specify, but I'm a decade out from a certain grade of my life. And I'm realizing that, like, through this last however many years, I've developed some taste. So not only have I developed taste in music, but I've also developed taste in humor. I think humor takes a little bit of time to kind of like figure out and hone in on. At least me. It doesn't come naturally to me, apparently. I'm just a poser, and I had to teach myself how to be funny. And then fashion, right? That took some time. You got to try on bad outfits. You got to be a little experimental. You kind of got to look back and be like, ooh, what was she doing? It's given 2009. But now, look at us. Like, we have grown so much to the point where I have developed this palette, and I like my own palette, right? And I actually try really hard not to be influenced by, like, the trends and social media, but all that is kind of inevitable, right? Like, I get a lot of the fashion inspo on TikTok, on Instagram. I'm not really Pinterest girly. I've never really been a Pinterest girly. I feel like sometimes I like try and then it just gets too difficult. And there was a point in time where I was like screenshotting a bunch of things, but like, why was I spending so much storage on screenshots, right? And so thank God for a save feature. And so yeah, it just took time. And I'm not saying that you have to like build taste in these things, right? Like, I don't really care. Someone's music taste and humor and fashion knowledge does not equate to how cool a person is. I don't think it's that. I think those are the external factors that have just kind of allowed me to express my taste in a certain way. But I actually think what's cool is thinking that you're an interesting human being. There are so many people who are interesting. It is mind-boggling to me that like you just kind of sit there and like you don't care about anything. Like, there's no passion. Like, do you care about the people around you? Do you care about like your career or your pet? Like, it could be anything, but I think it's interesting when people are interested, right? This whole like game of like nonchalance. Dude, who's winning the nonchalant war? Literally nobody. Everyone is losing the nonchalant war because guess what? You don't get what you want when you're nonchalant. If you want something, you go for it, right? If he wanted to, he would. And if she wanted to, she would, because why do people care about not caring, right? I get it to an extent. Sometimes I'm like, oh, like, you kind of like let the universe do whatever. That's kind of cool. But if you don't care about anything, I'm like, oh, that must be a very boring life, right? And I'm not saying that you have to have like one passion in a very specific topic, like whales or crocheting. Like, you can be a hobby enthusiast, right? Like, I have this friend. She has an Instagram. It's called Everyday Hobbyist. And it's just because she like likes picking up little hobbies here and there. And I'm like, girl, the ADHD in me is speaking, right? We are all connecting. And so it's just anything. Like, you can have passions about anything. And I think that that makes you cool and interesting. And right, also another part of like my whole thing is, even if you're the biggest nerd, I think that's interesting. I think I have maybe an overly optimistic perspective that everyone is interesting, and it has made it so that like even like when I would like meet a new person and I'm stuck in this boring conversation and I'm like, oh, how do I get out? Usually I can find one thing that I can just learn from them, right? I don't care. Talk to me. Can you explain to me what machine learning is? You seem to be an expert in that. I was explained what machine learning was by an Uber driver, right? Or even like certain people who are pursuing comedy. I'm like, what? Like, what is exciting about that? And they'll tell me, right? And so I really do think this like positive perspective has also allowed me to recognize that like, yeah, the people around me, no matter how dorky, no matter how lame they seem, are usually pretty cool, which means I'm probably pretty freaking cool. And I only want to hang out with people who like have that like self-confidence, because otherwise I'm like, is that fun? Is it like fun when like you don't even enjoy your own company? If you don't even enjoy your own company, why would you expect me to enjoy your company? You know what I mean? Like I love hanging out with myself. Except for sometimes I don't. Because today I had to return something and I got frustrated because they were like, oh, we don't have tape. And I'm like, aren't you a shipping center? I'm like, aren't you literally a FedEx? Like, it's not even that I went to like USPS. Like, I went to FedEx because that's where I had to return my package. But you don't have tape? So I got frustrated. And so during those times, I wish there was like somebody there who I could be like complaining with or like make a joke about it with. But like, here we are. I just have to accept fully that sometimes I gotta get a little moody grumpy. Especially when it's 95 degrees out. It has been so hot, y'all. What is going on? My house, like my parents' house, I just came from there because it was my dad's birthday. So humid. I was like, I am grumpy in the summer. Please, nobody talk to me. And then what? It gets down to like 67 at night. I am cold now. Can y'all decide what's going on? And let me get back to the topic. Being a floater friend, right? You gotta initiate plans. You gotta accept that you're just the floater friend. And then also, in line with that positive attitude and being optimistic, floater friends almost always find their group, right? It can take years to build, but like, I finally found my people. Like, I finally have my go-to person. I finally feel like wanted and needed by the people around me, and I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. This is a beautiful feeling, and it's really sad that I missed that for so many years, but like, here we are, and like, we're okay. And even when I look out to other people that I know are floater friends, usually you can pretty much recognize they usually find their people, and it's not always your responsibility to like be the person to like include them in things, because I know that could be hard too, of course, like, right, like oftentimes I try to go out of my way to make people feel included because I know exactly how it feels to not feel included, but so much of that can get exhausting. And so maybe the solution isn't folding them into the friend group, but maybe it's just that you have a one-on-one friendship with them. Like, there's so many solutions, right? Like, I think that's one thing that I've learned over the years. Like, there's so many solutions. Like, just because this person doesn't feel included in your friend group doesn't mean that like you can't still be friends with them, right? Or just because, like, from the floater friend perspective, just because this friend group doesn't really F with you, go move on to the next, right? Of course, it's kind of like dating, right? You can't just go on one day and expect to like be like, we're in a relationship and in love now. Like, it takes time to build this like camaraderie and like rapport and like sense of community, but like, invest the time, and then once the time is up and you're like, I don't think we vibe with each other as well as I would want in like a bestie, then like, let's move on. And so yeah, I really do think like your time will come. It'll come with time. And if you're okay being the floater friend, honestly, all freaking power to you. I wish I was okay. Okay, well, honestly, I accepted it at one point, but like, it's hard, right? If you are the floater friend and okay with it, and that's actually how you like it, more power freaking to you. This episode was a little all over the place, but y'all get my gist. You all catching the vibe, right? Because nobody is a floater when you're part of this community. So thank you for being a Kogi. Thank you for listening. And I will catch you guys next week.